This is going to be my success story about how I was able to manifest my ex back in just 2 weeks. So, just for a little bit of context, this happened in late 2018, early 2019. And also, if this does sound familiar to you at any point, I did post this story on the Neville Goddard subreddit back in 2019, right after it happened, under the username Moesha Green. So if this sounds familiar to you, there is a chance that you have read this story somewhere on the internet at some point in the last few years. But we were living together and he broke up with me on New Year's Eve, so I ended up moving out. And at the time, I wasn't aware of the fact that you could manifest a specific person. I didn't even know that was possible to do. I did know about manifesting, but I never consciously used it prior to this moment. So he broke up with me and he basically told me that I should just move on and find somebody else and that we weren't right for each other. So he closed the door completely on any chance of a reconciliation, any chance for us to work it out. So I was obviously devastated. So the next day, I went to work and I had a little bit of downtime and I was just researching articles on how to get someone back after they've broken up with you from a non-manifesting perspective, and then I stumbled across an article that said how to manifest a specific person, so I clicked on it, and that is basically what led me down the rabbit hole of manifesting an SP. So I consider this person to be a catalyst to my spiritual awakening. I was raised with spiritual beliefs, so as soon as I saw this, I immediately believed that it was possible, and I believed it was true, and I believed I was able to manifest a specific person. So the belief was there right out of the gate. But what I decided to do was actually just manifest some smaller, more insignificant things just to kind of test my power and to also give me some motivation. So I started manifesting smaller things and they all manifested into my physical reality with complete accuracy. So, of course, by this point, I was really, really motivated to manifest my ex because I was just really, really happy that all of these things were working. It was like I was just discovering this new superpower. So the first technique that I started doing was affirmations. So to and from work every day on my commute, instead of listening to music, I would say affirmations out loud to myself. So affirmations about him and us, and also ones about myself. The ones that I used for him were, he's so in love with me, he thinks about me all the time, he can't stop thinking about me, I'm the only one he wants to be with. Ones for myself, I pretty much just had 3, and they were, I am worthy, whole, and complete. So I had about 5 or 6 affirmations that I would use, and I would say I spent about 30 minutes every day saying affirmations out loud. I would try to visualize, but it was very difficult for me to do that. So when I would close my eyes and try to imagine a scene, I would pretty much just see the vague, general overall outline and kind of essence of the scene, rather than being able to clearly see specific details. I also did what I think is called the interview technique, which is basically where I just pretended to be interviewed by somebody about my success story. So I was just talking out loud to myself, acting as though I was answering somebody's questions about what I did to manifest my specific person back. So again, I was speaking in past tense when I did that. And this was one of my favorite techniques that I did. It really, really helped get me into the state. I also did the 2-cup method, which, if you don't know what that is, it's where you have 2 cups. 1 cup is full of water, and that cup represents the old state between you and the thing that you're trying to manifest. And then you have a 2nd cup, which is empty, and that represents the new state or the new story. So you pour the water from the old cup into the new cup, and then you drink the water. Obviously, this is just a placebo, but I was pretty much willing to try anything to get this to work. I also scripted, and every time I would script, I would do it from the perspective of the day that we just had spent together. So all of my scripting was in the past tense. I also did guided meditations where you connect to your specific person. I find guided meditations to be very effective because it just stops your brain from wandering and getting lost in thought. So if you have a meditation that's guided, it's really helpful for people that struggle to visualize. And I would send my person love all the time. And so one thing that I feel was really important to the success of this manifestation was the fact that I completely dropped the old story. So the love that I had for my specific person was actually more important and was stronger than any of my attachments to the old story. So I completely pushed out of my mind anything that happened between us. I pushed out of my mind the things that he said to me when we were breaking up that made me feel like there was no chance or no hope. I just completely ignored that. I ignored any of the past kind of dealings between us, any of the past fights that we might have had, anything like that. I just exclusively focused on the future that I wanted to have with this person. And I would say probably 80% of my day I felt really good and I felt really positive, and there was only about 20% where I was actually feeling sad. So my dominant state was most definitely a state of being happy, being positive, being grateful. The times when I did feel sad, I would just talk to myself and I would just remind myself, like, it is working, this is possible, it's going to work. I would read success stories every single day. And I would also just read articles that would inspire and motivate me. I mostly was on the Neville Goddard subreddit, which back at this time, I think only had about 5,000 members. So obviously there weren't as many resources as there are now. But I was also spending time on other websites, other forum websites and websites with just articles on it related to the law of attraction. And unfortunately, I've tried to look them up recently, and some of those websites are no longer available to access. But I would basically just look at things that gave me hope, that gave me encouragement, motivation. I started noticing movement around a week into it. So about a week in, there were a couple of times where I would be driving to work, and he would actually he would drive past me in the opposite direction. So I was manifesting him physically into my reality, even though we weren't back together and he didn't even see me when he drove past me. I manifested seeing him, so I knew that my manifestation was working. And also, about a week into it again, I started having dreams about us being back together every single night. So every night for like 5 nights, I had a dream about us being back together. And so I can't remember if it was the day that he came back or the day before he came back. I was just going about my day and I had an inspired vision of us together, like just dancing at our wedding. And this vision just felt so real and so natural that I immediately entered the Sabbath, or I immediately felt as though it was done. And I really started to feel as though I didn't want it anymore. And the reason that I felt like that is because I already had it. So I no longer felt as though he wasn't with me. I acknowledged that physically we weren't back together, but it's as though my consciousness completely shifted from us being broken up to us like already being married. And so, like I said, it was the day of or the next day that I was just going about my business, reading success stories, and I got a phone call from him, and he more or less said like, hey, do you want to talk? Let's meet up. So we met up, and he said that he wanted to get back together. And he actually said that the reason that he made it seem like he wasn't leaving the door open for another chance in the future is because he didn't want me to wait around for him. But he had always hoped that we would get back together. So if I had heard him say that when he was breaking up with me, if I'd have just taken what he said at face value, then the outcome may have been very different. But because I persisted in the end of us being together, he told me that he always wanted to get back together with me. So it literally changed the entire backstory. Another thing that happened was throughout the 2 weeks, he messaged me a couple of times asking me when I was going to come over and get the rest of my stuff. And normally this would upset me, but I changed the meaning of it, not to be that he wanted my stuff gone, but just that he was just using that as an excuse to reach out to me, an excuse to talk to me. So I was just really trying to be as positive as possible. So the reasons I believe that this worked so quickly was because I had complete clarity of desire. I knew exactly what I wanted. There was no contradiction within me as to whether or not I wanted it. I knew that I did, and that I laser focused on that particular goal. There was no resistance within me because I fully believed that it was possible. And I just continued to persist in what I wanted. I didn't let anything that I saw in the 3D, anything that happened in the 3D, bring me down, make me feel bad, make me doubt. I essentially had a one-track mind, and that was the fact that we were going to get back together no matter what. So that's my story. That's everything that I did. Hopefully this was helpful to someone out there. And if anyone does have any questions about this manifestation, feel free to ask me. I will be happy to answer all of your questions.